you've written just in one sentence. You said that incels think that monogamy would solve their issues. I don't know how you didn't phrase it exactly like that, but it was almost that.
That was, well, I mean, that wasn't me. That was me
Oh,
summarizing
okay.
what others have stated from the incel forums.
True,
Um,
that might be in your review. No, no, I think it was in the dating app paper.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, where I cited someone who talked about, um, on some incel forums, they talk about um, the fact that I think what it boiled down to was that um, monogamy or enforced monogamy ensured that kind of no one was left behind. Because if you have a population of, you know, 50% men and 50%
yeah,
women, and, assuming that, they're all heterosexual or there's an equal number of, say, gay men and lesbian
yeah,
women, if you're just all matched off one to one, then there's, you know, no one without a partner. Um, and certainly, there's some incels that talk about that on in the forums. And when I've asked incels about that, because of course those discussions always tend to be framed around, oh, women's sexual liberation is what's caused this problem. It's an issue, and that's where a lot of people jump in on and bash incels. The incels that I spoke to all believed that women's sexual liberation was a good thing. And what they'd said, like, I didn't really know what fully to expect when I was asking some of these questions. And, one of them really summed it up well. And he said, now, you know, I'd rather have someone be with me because they want to be with me, not because it was forced. So, they wouldn't have liked, like an arranged marriage, or, women feeling that, oh, well, I'm not married by the time I'm 20 and my clock is ticking. I've just got to find the nearest man or something like that. They didn't want that. They wanted to be wanted and valued for who they were as individuals. And they wanted that to be a conscious choice that women made, which is very different from what you would assume if you read some of the analyses of the forum posts. Um, which again is just another example of, we need to be, you know, understanding that this is a group that do not share the same set of beliefs uniformly.
wait, but what I was objecting was that what I was thinking when I read this sentence, it was almost assuming that monogamy would not solve all of their problems. And I don't know why every time we talk about monogamy in our current time, we jump right ahead to enforce monogamy by state or by culture or by religion. Or I don't see that, like, I don't see that as, like, right now I live in a pretty liberal place, right? And most people are monogamous. Like, most people are monogamous, and not because they're culturally enforced, not because anybody would shame them because they're monogamous, not because they're religious, just by virtue of wanting one person, that just by wanting security, just by wanting like some comfort, like emotional comfort. I don't, yeah, I don't think that I think monogamy is pretty good. What does the science, what does science say? Isn't monogamy pretty good? I think it is, right?
I mean, it seems to work for a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So I think the only reason we talk about forced is because in some of those forum discussions, there were like harkening back to um, more forced situations. Also, keeping in mind that despite what a lot of people think, incels aren't just a bunch of like American and British people. There's incels
yeah,
all over the world, including in places where there are arranged marriages.
yeah.
Um,
True.
and maybe they're in a situation where they aren't arranged, or they haven't been put up for an arranged marriage when they turn a certain age or something. Um, so for them, it might be more relevant to talk about it in that context, whereas others are talking about it more from a historical one or a current one, and just saying, yeah, it'd be nice if if I had just one person, right? I think something that gets kind of misconstrued is that people view incels as sort of like these like sex crazy individuals when it sounds like most of them would be happy to just have one person. Um, they're not looking or expecting to, be like I mean, I know he's married, so Ryan Gosling isn't a good example, but like someone who could like just go out and sleep with boatloads of women if they wanted to. Um, I think they probably have realistic expectations of what they want, and that's probably why it's difficult for them because they see so many other people being able to do that. Right? Like it's not like, oh, I want to grow up and be a CEO, um, which is like a very like unlikely thing and very difficult. And if you didn't quite achieve that dream, you might be like, okay, well, look, I don't know anyone else who did either. So, I might not feel that bad. But if your goal was, I want to go out and when I grow up have a full-time job and then you're 30 and you still don't have one, but everyone you went to school with does, and everyone you meet seems to, it's going to hit a lot harder, right? So I think it's the same for incels. If you set a reasonable goal or have reasonable expectations in life and then you're not hitting those, that's really tough.
Yeah, that was also one aspect. I think I had a big discussion with Vanta the Sybarite. Shout out to him. Really great conversation with him. And I was basically defending the existence of femcells, just definitionally. Um, but I have to say that, and I also told him that I think that the experience of a femcell is radically different than the experience of an incel in current society. I feel like society still is pretty sexist in the sense that men that don't get laid are being ridiculed or being basically treated badly by society, and women are being basically even incentivized not to get laid still to a certain extent. It's uh so how much of it is just coming from outside pressure um rather than inside need?
I think some of them who feel that femcells can't exist, their argument seems to be, well, and again, I don't agree with it, but I think their argument is, well, there's always going to be a man that would be willing to have sex with you, even if you're not a very attractive woman. But they don't feel that the same is true for them. So, they're kind of saying you're a femcel because you have certain standards. Now, people should be able to have whatever standards they want. You hope that they're reasonable. But, so I think that seems to be their argument against the existence um, of femcells. You're right. There's probably going to be a difference in the way that people respond to people not having sex, or people, continuing to be virgins um, later into adulthood, and like, obviously not if they're doing it for like religious reasons or something like that. Um, and there probably is an element of, like you mentioned, sexist attitudes, where there was pressure on women to be pure and there was pressure on men to be the pursuer, and a man is someone who has a lot of sex and stuff like that. So a woman could still be a virgin and not seen as less feminine, but if a man is a virgin, he could be seen as less
Even
masculine,
more
and
feminine.
that's not fair to anybody. um but I mean, those beliefs still exist out there. They're probably less severe than they were 30 or 40 years ago. But, you know, they're still present to varying degrees in different societies, and that obviously doesn't help male incels um, in dealing with stuff that's going on for them, right? People, I mean, you know, you've seen the 40-Year-Old Virgin. We're the same age. It came out at the right time. Um,
Yeah.
and right, there was a comedy
Yeah,
about
you laugh
that.
about it. It's
It's
funny.
fine. It was a good
Yeah.
movie, whatever. But it was like seen as comical, and like there's like a little bit of pity in there, right? Um,
A
and
woman in that same role
unfor-
would not be funny, right?
yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
they probably could make a good comedy about it, but you're right. Um, it's making light of a situation where it probably caused him deep down. I mean, I know obviously it's a fictional character, but in practice, if this was a real individual, something that caused them a lot of duress.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they can't laugh about it and whatnot, and if things get better, in hindsight, laugh about the journey or whatever. But you know, it certainly was put into a certain perspective, um, that maybe wasn't super helpful, or wouldn't be helpful if this was a real case scenario.
Yeah.
Um, and someone might not want someone to be crack, like if they disclose this to somebody, right? Maybe they get a new job, they meet a coworker, they kind of get to know them a little bit, and they disclose that, hey, like, man, I'm 30 years old and I've never kissed a woman before. um, and that might cause them a lot of duress. They might not want, their buddy actually like making jokes about it, um, because they already feel really ashamed of that. Um, so, you
Maybe
know,
as society we should stop making. No, maybe I'm not against like policing jokes. It's I think it's a really slippery slope to do that. But uh I think we can only do jokes if at the same time we're empathetic as well. So we can't
yeah,
just make jokes. We can't just shit on like you can't just make fun about men not getting laid and then when they say that they're depressed, say yes, I don't care.
yeah, yeah. I think that's probably a good way of putting it, right? If you're willing to be empathetic with them, then you might have more liberty to make jokes. And it's tough because, that's probably the only light in which that is viewed, is through a comedic lens, rather than that being one of many ways in which that is talked about. So, and that's probably where some of the shame comes, right? Because they might not feel that they can get an empathetic response, and that people will think lesser of them, or will make fun of them. um it's perfectly natural sometimes to want to rib someone about something they might be insecure about. Maybe not the nicest thing you can do as a friend, but you know, that is how some people socialize and how they've been taught to deal with things. But that doesn't mean that other people are going to feel that that works for them.
Mhm.
And some people might be more sensitive about it, right? Just like kind of like anything in life.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that frame uh, can be very different when it's about a man.